This is Real Estate This Week with Stephen Gasque. 17 years on air and online, helping you succeed in buying, selling, and investing in property. The best real estate strategies out there, just for you.
Welcome to Real Estate This Week. Hi again, I'm Stephen Gasque, and I'm delighted you're here as we look at investing in the spring market. Now, we all know that if you're buying or selling a house, the spring market is the busiest, fastest, and best time of year. But what about buying rental property? Will you still face competition? And are there enough properties for sale? Let's find out by asking a real estate investing expert. Joining us now is Peter West with Bishop West Real Estate in Massachusetts, Vermont, New York, and Florida. Peter has been investing and helping his clients invest for more than 30 years. Peter, welcome to Real Estate This Week.
Thanks, Steve. I'm glad to be back.
I am so glad you're here because here we are in the spring market of 2026. And I've got some questions for you. As an experienced investor, I'd like your take on whether the spring market is a good time to invest, or should you wait until another time of year?
Oh, that's a loaded question when you're asking somebody in the sales business. I mean, any time is a good time. But in all seriousness, Steve, I really, truly believe that as far as an investor goes, a serious investor, somebody learning to be, is going to realize it's a business and opportunity comes up year round. Now, having said that, there are some markets that prices do fluctuate. For example, in the Florida market, it's spring. Typically, your snowbirds are leaving, so the market tends to soften or slow up is probably a better word. New England, Michigan, places like that, the market seems to heat up in the spring. So aside from that regionalization, but markets, Texas, places like that are pretty status quo, if you will, anytime is good. But spring typically does bring out activity, more inventory, but more inventory, more activity equals more buyers as well.
Okay, so buying an investment property might depend on where you are and whether there is seasonality there. But what about replacing a tenant? I mean, if you buy a place in January and it's up in New England, you might have a tough time filling a vacancy 1 year later. What about that, Peter?
That's a valid point, because the reality is that in our investments in New England on the residential side, it is a little bit slower getting a tenant, because the reality is, who really wants to move in January? It could be below zero. It could be a blizzard. Those aren't the ideal conditions. And historically, if we end up with a vacancy in the winter, it does end up being a slower period of time in that region. Florida, for example, our rentals there, I don't think there's a bad time to replace a tenant. But, in the winter, in the north, or, in the upper Midwest, it is somewhat problematic, because unless you have to move, I don't think anybody in their really right mind has said, oh, you know what, let's move this month. This is, in January or February, this is a great time to move.
Right.
However, if you're the tenant, you may find a better deal because of exactly what we're talking about.
Interesting. And so back to buying an investment property. Everybody knows that the spring market is supposed to be the busiest, the fastest, and the best real estate market of the year. And it pulls in lots of buyers. So Peter, if I want to buy an investment property this spring, will I face a lot of competition, or does that not really exist in the investment space?
It does in certain components, and it depends on the asset class. If you're looking to buy a single family, you are clearly going to run into more competition, no doubt about it, because of everything you just said. But if it's a multifamily, a 3 unit, 4 unit, perhaps it won't make so much of a difference. But what I'm seeing in the market is something I haven't seen since I started over 40 years ago. And that is that people are starting to go back to buying a multifamily as a residence just because the cost of singles and maintaining it is significantly higher. And in most markets in the past 6 years, the values have escalated significantly. Western Mass and the Berkshires, the average price has almost doubled from 6 years ago. That's a significant number, so affordability plays into it. And now always was attractive when I started. And then everybody just got into buying a single family. And now we're starting to see people looking for that owner occupied multi. But I don't think that's going to create a lot of competition for the investor. A little bit, but not something that's going to really blow it out of the water.
And so, we've set the stage now for the spring market of 2026 when it comes to investing. So if I've always dreamed about having a rental property with tenants in it that pay the rent reliably every single month, Peter, what would be my first step this spring?
Well, I think the first step is to really define your goals. What are your goals? Are you doing this because you think it's a great way? And I know it is a great way to save for the future, have tax benefits, but really, what are your goals? How it's going to be managed, but who's going to manage it? Are you going to manage it from afar? Are you going to be hands-on manager? Are you going to hire a management company? Those are all key things. And even if you're buying one single or one two family or a duplex, you still need a business plan, because you have to figure out how you're going to handle this. This is, there are tax ramifications. It's tax season in the spring market. So it's great to have property, but if you've owned them for a longer period of time, you get to the point now where they're making significant money. Well, that's great. But on the other hand, significant money equals income in the eyes of the IRS. And all of a sudden now you find out that you owe some money. However, this season, we're dealing with accelerated depreciation again, which means simply that you can do a capital improvement, a roof or something significant, not a repair, but something significant, replacing a heating system or an air conditioning system or putting all new windows in. Those aren't repairs, those are capital improvements, and they're depreciated over time. But right now, through the IRS code, you're allowed to rapidly depreciate them, which creates a significant tax savings.
Okay. Now, Peter, if I want to invest in real estate and I've never done it before, but it's my dream, do I have to be just loaded with lots of money? Or can I get into investing if I'm not really wealthy?
Absolutely. And that's the one thing that's different than going out and buying a company or a business where you do need significant money. Now, I've seen it where people have done it with bare bones minimum, and it's possible, not totally recommended, because if you tap every nickel you have and then first week into it, you have a major significant mechanical breakdown or something like that, how are you going to pay for it? But there are many programs out there. And one of the ways that possibly somebody could start investing is owner occupied multifamily, because with a 1 to 4 family owner occupied, you still get the benefits and the tax benefits and all the landlord benefits that are investor benefits as you do, except for your unit. So there's a bonus there. But owner occupied 1 to 4 family, you have the ability to buy that with significantly less money down. Typically, a lender on a non-owner occupied typically is looking for 20% down. Now, there are other programs out there 5% down, 10% down in different types of loans. A DSCR loan is extremely popular, and that's the acronym for debt service coverage ratio, where they look at the property performance. And we have a DSCR product that we put a lot of people into, 10% down, 30-year fixed, which doesn't usually exist in income property or investment property. One of the things that you need to start with is you need to talk to a realtor that's very in tune to the investment market, where they can go for financing. And just like I would tell any home buyer, you need to have that conversation with the lender to see what it's going to look like and what a lender will give you to go buy property based on your scenario.
And so you mentioned going to the right realtor, a realtor who understands investment property. So tell us about that. You would not recommend, for instance, your cousin who just became a realtor?
Absolutely not. This is a significant financial transaction. And I would say this to even somebody buying a regular single family home. And you said the cousin that just got a real estate license. Real estate is a complicated business, and the consumer isn't typically aware of what the realtor that has a lot of experience brings to the table. What that realtor can bring to the table can save you tens of thousands of dollars or save you from making a significant mistake. In this conversation, where we're talking about investment real estate, a key to this is a realtor that owns investment real estate and works specifically in the investment field, because it is different than a single family residence. It's different than, say, a condominium. A lot of people are getting into Airbnb or VRBO or short term rental investment properties, which are great, but you need to know the area and the market and what the regulations are. Many marketplaces are putting in municipal regulations. And if that realtor doesn't know about them, can significantly put you at risk of paying too much for a property that, yeah, it worked based on the numbers, but now those numbers aren't there. Now what do you do?
I see.
So it's got to be somebody that totally knows the market. What are the rental rules? Are you required to have local management in the area? Or are you required to live so many miles or minutes from the property? Who's going to answer the call? Those are things that a investment realtor that specializes in investments are going to know that a regular realtor may not know.
Interesting. And Peter, another question. If there's a really good rental opportunity in a market, and it's a single family home or it's a multifamily unit, tell me, if I want to buy it, if it's so good, why wouldn't a real estate professional who does investing buy it before me?
That's a good question, and that was hitting my head subliminally as I was answering the last question. But the reality is that a good realtor will always put their client first. If that property is on the market available, then that realtor should put their client first. I would never buy a property out from under a client. However, if it's still available, then the realtor already knows about it, and it might not fit within what their investing parameters are or something like that. But my father used to say, if a deal is too good to be true, it probably is.
Now tell me this. Once you identify a property, is it better to buy a property that already has a tenant in it, or one that's vacant so you can put a new tenant in it?
That's a double-edged sword in a way. Some schools of thought are empty. You get to select the tenant that you want to put in there. The other school is it's already cash flowing and there. So if there's already a tenant or tenants in the property, one wants to look at their payment history, how often they pay, when they pay, do they pay on time, those types of things? Or do you deal with putting in your own tenants? Now, putting in your own tenants isn't going to happen overnight. A good landlord or a good investor is going to screen tenants. And when you put a property on the market for rent or for lease, you're going to take some time. And quite truthfully, it's probably 30 to 60 days before that is actually rented if you're really doing it the proper way. If it's the beginning of the month where it's going on, it may take a little bit more time, or you might get lucky and have a tenant that comes up. But one of the successes for especially residential rentals is screening the tenants. Screening has to be done lawfully, keeping in mind fair housing issues across the board. However, screening is really critical. I just put one of our rentals on, and we have a certain standard, and you can't deviate from the standard to maintain fair housing practices and keeping yourself out of a fair housing issue. So, what is your criteria? I got one that hit instantly in a response, and in the questionnaire in the platform that they had answered, it asked what their credit score was, and it said the credit score is between 300 and 500. Doesn't meet the muster for what we're looking for. So it's not going to happen immediately. And as a rule of thumb, I've learned that somebody that needs to move immediately has some kind of skeleton in the closet that is probably a tenant that I don't want. I'm always
Ah.
very, very careful in screening my tenants. I would rather keep a unit open a month than put the wrong tenant in it.
But if you find a property that's for sale and you really want to buy it and it already has a tenant in it and they're paying a pretty decent rent, then you don't have any months at all without income.
Exactly. And as long as in your due diligence, you look for the rental log and see that they pay, fairly on time. I've got some tenants that have been with us for years that I know they don't get their check or their payment, or they're paid biweekly and they don't pay exactly on the first. But if somebody consistently pays on the third or the fourth, and they've been there for 3 years and they've always had that history, it's you got to dive into the story. But there's really nothing wrong with buying a building or a house that has a tenant or tenants that have already been in there.
I see. Well, that's good to know, Peter. And now, once you have the tenant in place and they're paying the rent reliably, and you're thinking, this is actually working, Peter, when do you know if it's time to buy another rental property?
That's a good question. Historically, and I always learned that if you're investing, you should buy one a year. Anything that goes really rapidly or fast upwards, increasing units or buying, sometimes doesn't always work out. Slow and steady wins the race. It's also depending on how much disposable income you have to be putting down or whatever. So, based on what the lending is and based on what you have available in capital, because lenders are going to look at what you have available for reserves for if the air conditioning goes or the boiler breaks or a significant repair. How are you going to handle it? And if you go out and buy 3 or 4 properties in a year and you have no reserves, that's almost a financing issue, but it's almost predictable that there's going to be some failure rate there. It's not as small residential income property isn't as glamorous as one would think it is, and things do break, roofs do leak, and tenants have situations come up in their lives that they don't always pay or always pay on time. And you have to be able to, as an investor, be able to absorb that whether you like it or not. We all like our rent on the first. I've got a tenant that pays me on the first for the following month because he's always 1 month ahead. But
Wow.
out of my units, that's an anomaly. And I always have the ones that were poking. And I think it's gotten easier over time because many times a tenant will want to drop off the payment at the office or something like that. Once we've gone to the availability of a platform where they can pay online, we're getting rents faster because you don't have that, oh, I have to drop it off, or I was driving by and there's nowhere to park, and then I got busy, things like that. So again, it's a business, Steve, and you have to look at it as a business. And there is a cost to hosting a platform like that, but I'm okay with paying for a platform like that if I'm getting paid by the majority of our tenants in a more timely fashion.
Excellent. And Peter, one of the reasons I really like talking to you about investing is you don't just say, oh, yeah, it's a great idea. You say, it is a great idea if you do the homework, you understand the process, and you know all the rules. That's very helpful. Which brings me to the biggest question of all. Peter, with all those regulations and rules and all the laws and all the experience that you'll need to be successful, tell me this, is it worth it? And what will real estate investing mean to my life?
I think it's definitely worth it. Nothing comes easy. There's no such thing as a free lunch. So you're not going to make millions of dollars. You know, HGTV has kind of set a tone in people's mind, and everybody thinks they can get into flipping and make a lot of money. And there is no quick buck. Like I said earlier, slow and steady wins the race. So it is definitely worth it. It definitely has its tax benefits. And the longer you own it, the better it gets. We're at a position now with our investment portfolio where we've owned the stuff so long, some of it's paid off, some of it has very little debt left on it. And over time, they were bought when the value was low and rents were much lower, and now rents have crept up over time. It's definitely worth it because think about this. If everything goes almost as planned, you have a 2, 3, or 4 family, or even a single family, and it pays for itself. Over time, 10, 15, 20 years, that asset is free and clear, worth, I don't know, pick an arbitrary number, $2, 3, 4, $500,000, depending on the market. Let's just pick a number, 350. If you needed to, in the next 15 years, you wanted to save $350,000, how much would you have to pay out of pocket every month or every week to, in 15 years, 180 months, get to that number? It's about $2,000 out of pocket.
Wow.
If everything goes and you run it properly and you run it like a business, you're going to get there and you're going to have an asset in that same period of time worth that same 350-ish that we're talking about, that you have probably not put much money, if any at all, out of pocket. It's the only type of investment that you can leverage getting a mortgage or a loan. You can't get a loan and go buy stocks. This is the only investment vehicle where you can use leverage, where you put, small amount down, 10% down, 20% down, and it's paid off over a period of time with somebody else's money. There is no other investment vehicle like it. So is it worth it? Absolutely.
Peter, that is such a great analysis, and I really appreciate it. I also appreciate everything you've told us today, and I'm so glad that you could join us talking about investing in real estate in the spring market of 2026. Peter, I can't wait to talk to you again, and thank you.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Peter West with Bishop West Real Estate in Massachusetts, Vermont, New York, and Florida. Peter has been investing and helping his clients invest for more than 30 years. Next time on Real Estate This Week, our first anniversary show. Now sure, I've been doing real estate shows for 17 years, but this show is my favorite. It digs deeper than any other, all for you. So let's celebrate in show 52. And until then, I'm Stephen Gasque, and thank you for listening.
A brand new episode of Real Estate This Week with Stephen Gasque drops every Thursday, everywhere. And you're invited to listen, subscribe, and follow us. Just look for Real Estate This Week with Stephen Gasque. The best real estate strategies out there, just for you.